On episode 58, we continue our Filipino American History Month series. Today, I sit down with Justher Gonzalez from Malaya South Bay, Camille Valerio from LEAD Filipino, and Mark Serrano from the Filipino Youth Coalition and Filipino American National Historical Society, Santa Clara Valley. They help me to get to know the Filipino community in the South Bay a bit more and share all the activities taking place this month. We also talk about what it means to be Filipino enough when Filipino American History Month came into our view and how ube has gone all mainstream. Thanks for being here. Grab a beverage, pull up a chair, and enjoy listening to my conversation with Justher, Camille, and Mark. My name is Bruce Reyes-Chow, and this is BRC and Friends. Each episode, my co-host and I chat with activists, artists, academics, and adventurers to discuss politics, faith, pop culture, technology, and as you will discover, pretty much everything that pops into our heads. This is basically an excuse for us to hang out with friends and colleagues and riff about things that matter. Welcome to BRC and Friends. And welcome to BRC and Friends, the San Jose Filipino edition. We have some folks from the community who I've invited to be on. They all said yes. I don't know if they know exactly what they're getting into, but we're glad to have this second episode for Filipino American History Month. And so we want to talk a little about local, where I'm living now. Folks know that I've been all over the Bay Area, but San Jose is my home and right at this point, and I've gotten to know a lot of, I've already interviewed a bunch of people, and they have San Jose roots, which I had no idea about. You know, from San Francisco, we're a little smug about San Francisco and that area, we are the center of the universe. But there's lots of stuff going on here and that I'm learning about. So that's why I invited you all. We're going to have folks introduce themselves first. So we're going to start with Camille and then kind of go around the circle. So Camille, if you introduce yourself, kind of where you're from, context, organization, pronouns, all that stuff.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Bruce. Hey, everyone. My name is Camille, she, her, Shaw. Born and raised in Daly City, but based in Milpitas. And I'm the program manager and head designer with LEAD Filipino, helping support our programming as well as supporting our work with grassroots organizing and community development. So really excited to be here.
Hey, Justher here. She, her pronouns. I am with Malaya South Bay, which is an organization that fights for human rights, sovereignty, and democracy in the Philippines. I am the local coordinator and have been with Malaya since 2018, but have been a part of FACT SJ, doing San Jose-based Filipino programming and events since we started up in 2019, but I guess we'll talk more about that later.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Mark Serrano. I am the acting executive director of Filipino Youth Coalition San Jose, and I am also part of Filipino American National Historical Society Santa Clara Valley, in which I am a core member.
Great. Awesome.
And I'm from San Jose.
And for somebody, what is FACT?
So FACT SJ, it stands for Filipino Americans Coming Together San Jose, and it's actually a collective of organizations which includes LEAD, FONS, SCV, FYC.
What's LEAD? Which one?
That's right, LEAD Filipino, which is the organization that Camille is part of. Filipino American National Historical Society, Santa Clara Valley, Filipino Youth Coalition San Jose, Bayani ng Kabataan, the Cultural School of Social and Cultural Education, and then Malaya South Bay, Paui South Bay, and Movable. I don't think I'm forgetting one, but those are the ones that
is that everybody.
Mind, so. Yeah, I think that's everyone.
There's I'm telling y'all, there's a lot going on down here that I am fully. I don't know if apologetic is the word, but I had no idea. Being mostly San Francisco, Daly City area, but it has been amazing to kind of get to know folks and what's happening. But before we dive into kind of what's going on, I always ask our guests, what's brought you joy the last, recently, and it could be whatever. If it's something bad's happening, but you found some joy in it, that's fine. Or if there was just something super cheesy that brought you joy, or something deep and meaningful, what has brought you joy? Hustler, oh my goodness
all
gracious.
Good.
So we've been having this thing about saying, Justher's, I don't know why Justher's name correctly, because I'm an idiot and I cannot pronounce names. And then, like it's one of those earworms you get in your head and then you just get it wrong. What's something that's brought you joy? Let's stop talking about your name.
What has brought me joy? I think recently, it's just been really nice. So I live very close to actually where we're going to have Fam Jam and all of the different events near the Berryessa area. And I've been able to actually catch my housemates at night. And usually we're just always all over the place. So the fact that we're able to like spend time together. I think the other night they were watching like the One Piece anime. And it was just really nice to just catch everyone and then realize I'm like dozing off and like, okay, I'm going to go to bed, but it's really nice knowing everyone's home. And I think that's in I guess a world where we're just always running off doing our own things. That's brought me a little slice of joy.
Do you have commentary on the live action version?
But I also have a zero like context. I did not follow the manga or the anime at all. But the visuals are really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I started to watch it and realize that I'm old, and I just didn't. I was like, I understood conceptually what was happening, but I could not track. Like, there was too much going on. Anyway, there you go. Camille, what's brought you joy recently?
For me, well, I will say that there is also a lot going on in that show. Great show. But for me, I think what's bringing me joy is that with me moving, I think that I've appreciated all the moments that I've had with my parents. So they're helping me dog sit right now. So they'll call me and they'll ask, I'm like, how's the dog doing? And they're like, oh, she's doing good. We like to go on our little walk. So for me, this is really heartfelt, and I really appreciate those really fun calls because I know it's chaotic on the other side of the phone. And so I'm just imagining the dog and my parents and the little walks are going on.
Oh, good. Awesome. Great. Thank you. Mark, what about you? What's brought you joy lately?
Well, I'm probably sure it should be my child.
It does.
I just had a child in January. I'm still kind of getting the hang of this new parent thing. Just my first child. But other than him, it would be probably the month of October, which is Filipino American History Month. And every time October comes around, I know it gets really busy and stuff, but I'm kind of like a busy guy. I like the hustle and bustle and stuff. So, that kind of brings me joy as well. So my child and nice. Filipino American History Month.
I have 3, Mark, and I hardly ever mention them at all. So
sometimes I forget. It's like, oh my God, I have a child.
As long as you don't forget them in the car, you're good. Like you're
Mark,
it happens.
We have this like newfangled car, and it's an electric car, and it for the longest time it had this thing where it says, "Look in the back seat." Reminder: look in the back seat. And I'm like, why? Why does it keep telling me to look at the back? And I'm like, oh, because parents are forgetting their kids back there, apparently. And so there's this alert that says before you get out. And I'm like, how do you turn this off? Because I'm leaving my kids back there on purpose now at this point. For me, what's brought me joy lately? So we're empty nesters. My kids are all out. And every once in a while, like my wife and I have very different tastes in TV. Like I'm John Wick, Fast and the Furious. Like I'm all that, and she's the Good Doctor and like other I don't know, The Bear. Some of these other ones. And every once in a while, we find ones that we both like, and we actually wait for each other. We started watching Picard from the beginning, and so we've been every night. We watch 2 episodes, and she falls asleep in the middle of the second one every night. And then, but it's like every once in a while we get these like things where like for 2 weeks in a row we'll make sure we sit and watch TV together towards the end of the evening. And we're both so busy and all over the place that it's always good to be able to do that. And then a kid comes and stays with us for a night, and we're like, they mess it all up, and all that kind of stuff. But otherwise, that's brought me a great deal of joy these days. All right, let's talk about Filipino American History Month. Those of you that are tuning in again, Dr. Kevin Nadal talked a little bit about its roots and its history, so make sure you go listen to that episode. But let me ask, how did you all, and anybody can go, how did you all first become aware of Filipino American History Month? Because I know that it's really boomed in the last few years. I mean, I think it's just really boomed, but it's been around for a while. But when was your first kind of like, oh, there's such a thing? When did you become aware of it? And feel free, anybody, jump in.
Oh, wow.
I'll let the ladies go first.
Chivalry is not dead.
Yeah. I can go ahead and get us started. Yeah, thanks, Mark, for pushing it out to us. Okay. For me, I feel like the first time I heard about Filipino American History Month was when I got to college. So I went to San Jose State University, joined a fine Filipino American club or organization, and we started celebrating October, observing it as Filipino American History Month. And for me, it was really weird. I grew up in Daly City, where there was many Filipino Americans living in the area.
Are there? I'm
yeah,
shocked.
It's like, question mark with the fog. It's fog and Filipinos. And I already had known about my identity and my culture, but to know that we're celebrating our history, like I had no idea until college. So I feel like that was the first time I just really got to recognize the importance of our community's contributions.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think
thank you. Others?
I'm trying because I feel like I probably had a similar experience. I went to St. Mary's College in Moraga, and I think what you get when you go out from away from your big Filipino community is realizing that you're Filipino. And I think it was really like the introduction. Like I took an Asian American Studies class and learned about the Manongs for the first time. Larry Itliong, Philip Vera Cruz. At that point, I don't think it had been as mainstream yet, but folks were talking about celebrating like Larry Itliong Day. And then, I think things as after like undergrad, starting to see that become more of a presence when I moved back to San Jose. So it was like college and then after college.
Right. Awesome. Great. Mark, what about you?
I think for me, it was probably when I was in high school in the 90s. And I just hella aged myself. But, back in the 90s, there was like a real big like awareness of being like Filipino and being proud to be Filipino. Like everyone would wear like the Filipino strength shirts and stuff like that. And I actually learned about Filipino American History Month through Filipino Youth Coalition. I wasn't formally part of the organization quite yet, but my brother was, and like he would bring home like literature, and I would hear him talking about it, and just like friends talking about it and stuff. So I didn't actually find out about Filipino American History Month like through like an official outlet. It was just kind of like, oh, this month is Filipino American History Month, but I guess that's how it started for me.
All right. Awesome. That's great. I realized, Mark, when I read your bio that you're a San Francisco State. That's where I went. But so here I'm going to age myself because I went to San Francisco State before there was an Asian American Studies degree, but I got one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was in the 90s or the late 80s, early 90s, and got a degree in Asian American Studies, religion, and sociology. But I had to combine them all together before they had an actual Asian American. So you're not the oldest one here. You did say hella. You did say hella, which does age you somewhat, but that's all right.
Hella is like part of my
timeless.
I say it all the time. And my kids are like, oh my god, it is. I'm ready for my kids to start saying it again. I'm like, see, it's a good word. It is a good word. That's a good word. Awesome. Well, that's great. Now tell me, what do we got going on in San Jose? What activities are happening from each organizations, things that are going on for a Filipino American History Month. So, and then those of you who are listening, that'll all be in the show notes. So you'll see all the calendars and Instagram links and all that kind of stuff. So, go ahead. Mark, why don't you start? What do we got going on with all the groups that you're part of?
So for Fawns, actually, a lot of the events that we have for Filipino American History Month, it kind of, all of our organizations are kind of a part of it. Again, Fact SJ is this, this collaborative that kind of adds into everything that happens in October. So first and foremost, this Saturday, which I don't know the date, I think it's the 7th. This Saturday we have Pinoytown Art Walk, and that's happening in Japantown. And a bulk of that event is going to be happening at Empire 7. And basically that's going to be an event where we're showcasing like different artists, like paintings, and we got some music. I'm DJing that day with a buddy of mine, Abe Minor, and it's just going to be a nice afternoon of just art and music and different things like that. We also have what is called Pinoytown walking tours, which also happens in Japantown. A lot of people don't know, but in the 1920s and 1930s, Japantown had like a small enclave of Filipinos that lived there, and there was Filipino businesses, Filipino families, and they lived there for a while. And it's strange because being in San Jose myself, and being like an Asian American studies major, I didn't find out about Pinoytown until maybe when I joined FONS about 5-6 years ago. So we do a walking tour which takes people around the places that would make up Pinoytown, and that happens every Sunday of October. And then we also have Fam Jam, which I'll let the other two ladies speak on a little bit more later on. But it's our annual events where we bring local talents out to perform, and we also have vendors and food trucks, and it's a free event. It happens at the Garden of the Fleet, or Garden at the Fleet, and that's going to be on the 20th, which is a Friday, and it's from 5 to 9.
Awesome. Get there early, y'all. I tried to get there last time, and I was like, all these Filipinos are hell early. What is up with that? Mm-hmm. And I swear I was waiting in that to drive in for like 45 minutes. I'm like, what is happening?
That line gets long, man.
It was awesome. It was awesome. All right, Camille, other things going on. What's going on, Camille, that other things are happening?
Yeah, so I think also just to add on to the Pinoytown Art Walk that Mark had just mentioned on October 7th, it's actually our first art walk ever to help provide the historical context of the Filipino community, but also just to gather all the local San Jose-based, Santa Clara County-based film artists and performers. So, in the Bay, there are different film events that are going on. So I think this event upcoming is going to be very cool since it's first of its kind and hopefully an annual event. But the other events that Marcus mentioned, we're also having our Filipino American History Month flag raising and lighting ceremony, which is sponsored by San Jose City Council. So with that, we're having los cuyes, the free tacos, free chips and salsa, as well as, more local performers, local makers and resources like all of our organizations coming out to celebrate and observe Filipino American History Month. I think this event specifically it's free, family friendly, of course, but I think it's great just to truly settle in the historical context and understand how we can continue to celebrate and observe this month with all the festivities. So I feel like it's more reflective, a little bit more introspective about the topics, the speakers, and of course the community leaders that are coming to enjoy this event with us.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Justher, what do you got going on?
Well,
What's
right now we're definitely going to be rolling out to the community and bringing out our members, like for those events that were just being described. I do want to shout out one of our friends who is a drag artist. She's called Manong, and she has the third ever Kababayan Drag Brunch that will be at Mama Kin on October 21st. 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And she's bringing out all the other Filipino queens to go be out there and also give a chance for community to speak. So I think it's going to be a really good time. There's a plethora of events. And I think there's also Camille or Mark, there's the open mic that's also happening at the end of the month. I just don't. Yes, I just don't recall all the details, so I'm going to hand it off to someone to describe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be called our family-friendly open mic. It'll be on Saturday, October 28th from 5 to 8 p.m. 5 to 6, we're actually inviting the monoms and monoms of our community to do a little bit of talk story, share their experience of, observing Filipino American History Month and what they've seen over the years. And then from 6 to 8, we'll invite it to all the local artists, spoken word. We have stand-up comedy as well from 6 to 8. So Ruth, if you're trying to come over and share a little bit of your spoken word, your reading.
I'm always amazed at people who get up and do things that are super vulnerable, like sing. Like, I am not a singer, or who will do play. I'm just like, you go. I'm like, yes, you go. I have this dream about being a stand-up comic and someday, but then it's like, that is the most terrifying thing. I can do a lot of stuff by myself on stage and I'm fine, but I just can't imagine. I want to say about the Pinoytown. When I first moved here about a year and a half ago now, I saw that and came, and that was kind of my first introduction. I think that's when I may have met you first, Mark. I knew we had a hit because I DJ'd in high school. My kids don't believe me, but I DJ'd in high school, and I was like, I'm gonna show up when Mark DJs, so I can't be there this weekend, unfortunately. But the thing that I found personally out of that, so my grandfather's side is Ilocano, and his maiden grandmother's last name is Bacosa, Bacosa, and my kids have their mother's last name. The boys would have my last name, the girls would have Robin's last name, and we have 3 girls. So so my wife is white, so they have these super white first and last names. So we gave them Bacosa as a middle name. I'm like, we got to get some brown in there. They all have the same middle name. But we've never seen Bacosa. They would ask me, Dad, are you sure Bacosa's Filipino? Because we've never seen it anywhere. And I'm on this walking tour, and I see that there was this cafe called the Bacosa International Cafe or something. And I had never seen my family name out in the wild. I mean, it was it was one of those it's real. Okay, we're legit. So thank you for that tour, because that was I texted my kids, showed them pictures, and I was like, look, it's Filipino. I did not trick you. So there we go. So that's great. All right. So those are all amazing things that are going on. For me, Filipino American History Month. So the part of I kind of have a cheat, because I knew Dawn Mabalon. Her family and I went to the same church and all that, and I did her Jesse's wedding. So I knew about Filipino History Month. Knew about Filipino History Month way early, but not because I was any more aware. It was just because everybody around us, we were doing Little Manila and all that stuff in Stockton, where I grew up. So that, so I've seen it, and these last 5 or 6 years have just been amazing to see it much more mainstream. But even still, we all grew up Filipino. Sometimes you're aware of it, sometimes you're not. But so my next question for you, though, is, so, we have a lot, the span of what it means to be Filipino American is just as diverse as we are. And I know that my kids at times, I'm certainly at times, have said well, somebody's really Filipino, I'm not as Filipino, and that whole internal conflict about, am I Filipino enough? If you have a young person come up to you and say I don't feel like I'm really Filipino enough, how do you respond to young folks or whoever that are struggling with that idea, about this idea that there is a way to measure your Filipino-ness? But how might you respond to that? And anybody, feel free to go ahead and chime in.
I guess I can go first. Well, for me, no one thinks that I'm Filipino. Everyone just kind of assumes that I'm either Samoan or Tongan. And it's really because of my size and my tattoos and just whatever. But when they do find out that I'm Filipino, it's oh, I would have never guessed, and that always used to bother me, but because I think in people's minds, like being Filipino, like I don't know how to speak the language, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Or I don't even, there's a lot of like Filipino things that I don't do, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I'll always get like, oh, you don't seem like you're Filipino. Well, what is being Filipino? You know what I mean? And the whole being Filipino enough. My thing is, well, for me, it's like if you're aware of who you are and you have even just one drop, the one drop rule, right? Where it's like, you have even just a little bit of blood of being Filipino, you know what I mean? That's enough, you know what I mean? I don't believe that there should be some sort of scale, you know what I mean? Even if you were mostly, I don't know, white or something like that, but you identified with the Filipino that's in you, the one drop of Filipino that's in you, that's enough for you to be considered Filipino. Yeah. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be the language or the food that you eat or, taking off your slippers when you come inside. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. No, I think, I think there's a lot of it that happens where we do it to ourselves too. Like I'll go into a community and like we're trying to measure where everybody is. Like some of it's like just we want to know like, are you legitimately like down with the stuff? But also, I think there is this like ranking of do you speak, do you eat, who do you know, like what's all those things. But yeah. Camille, what about you? How do you respond to somebody that talks about that question of Filipino enough?
Yeah, I feel like this is like one of my favorite questions. I feel like they go on and on. So you're going to have to stop me at some point. But I feel like this is something that I talk about a lot with my friends because our biggest realization of the culture and identity came from when we went to college. But growing up, I had always just felt Filipino. Like I knew I was Filipino. I learned my family had the Nani Cacao party. We were rolling up with the Filipino spaghetti, the lumpia. And I grew up in Daly City, as I just mentioned. So there wasn't like, I didn't see, or I saw a lot of myself in other people. And the cherry on top was my last name is Valerio, like the bakery. And unfortunately, I don't own it, so I can't give everyone free.
Oh, we all went. But we were all like, oh, I know, awesome. Oh, never mind.
I know the light in everyone's eyes, but I'm so sorry to disappoint you. But I think just knowing all that and growing up with all those different factors, I always felt I was Filipino. But when Mark mentioned the language piece, that is the one part that I'd always, in the back of my mind, felt like, oh, am I Filipino enough? And it brought me to that question. And so what I would say to someone, when I'm talking about it with them is that, being Filipino is like a fact, just as much as it's true that we breathe oxygen, that we breathe air. That's not something that someone else can just take away or say that it isn't true because you are Filipino no matter what. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's what I would say in response.
Great. Thank you.
I also like this question. I think I've definitely had my own struggles with it, but I think what I'm trying to figure out is what's that through line that unites us in everything. And I really think it's being able to fight and show up for your community. I think the big thing that's been inspiring, whether Filipino American history is like, you don't resist colonization for like hundreds of years without showing up for your community and fighting. You don't get through hard times of assimilation, of all of that. It's that really finding, that very big importance of showing up for your friends, your crew, your family, all those people. And it is like a lot oftentimes around the same kind of foods, the same kind of activities, karaoke, whatever, different languages. But I think there's something that I've always appreciated. If we say that question comes forward, like, are you Filipino enough? Yes, you are. If you feel those intense emotions, if you feel for the people around you, like you are. And I think that's the thing that I'm always learning and trying to combat when I feel like I'm less than. But that's kind of where I'm settling right now in that sort of question.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Everybody I've talked to so far, and I think there is something about the Filipino-ness because of how different we all look in our experiences, and that comes from like just colonialism in general, from the Philippines, like all of the ways that's there's not this natural like, oh yeah, most Filipinos look like this, right? You just can't do it. I had the privilege of being at the Women's World Cup this summer, and I watched the Philippines, the women's team at their beat New Zealand. Amazing. But you look at that soccer team, and that in itself, it looks like what the Filipinos look like. I mean, our keeper. I mean, she's probably a quarter Filipino, maybe like blood, but so she looks super white. And there was a fan there who's like, oh well, the Filipinos, they got a ringer, and I'm like, my daughter's like, should we explain about colonization? And I'm like, no, let's just let it go. But right, just because she couldn't be Filipino because of what she looked like, but yet she clearly was, like, we could see it. So I think that part of it, it's just so broad. But everybody I've talked to has had this identity question, no matter where you grew up and how much Filipino-ness you have around you. My kids, and we do this to ourselves, right? One of my kids says, Dad, I don't like ube. And I know, Mark, I don't think you like ube either.
Nope.
And she's like,
you're Filipino.
Like, are they going to take away?
Hold on. Actually, okay. You know what? I just want to put this out there. It's not that I like hate ube. It's just I don't understand the hype. You know what I mean? It's like ube everything. Cookies.
Well, it hit Trader Joe's. As soon as it hits Trader Joe's, I'm like, oh.
But that mochi though is so good.
That too. No, it is really good.
Okay, so they're doing it right. They're doing it right.
I actually do want to point, and this is probably something that that most people, especially when it comes to talking about like identity and stuff. I think one of the main things that needs to be pointed out is that this whole like Filipino enough conversation, it's driven a wedge between Filipino born, like Filipino Americans, and then folks that come from the Philippines. And it's been like an age long kind of conflict, you know what I mean? And for us Filipino Americans, it's crazy because when you go to the Philippines, you know what I mean, you're not Filipino, you're American, right? Number one, because you dress differently and you talk differently, but here in the US, we're not exactly American, you know what I mean? I mean, when people ask you, or when you say, oh yeah, I'm American, but what kind of American? You know what I mean? So there's that, I'm not going to mention it, but there's that, there's definitely that, that idea of what being an American is, but I think the conversation of whether or not you're Filipino can both destroy us and bring us back up. We just have to be able to learn how to, learn how to approach that, and I think discussions like this is absolutely needed. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, I think that the Phil-Am and Filipino thing. But now Malaya does a lot across, obviously. So how does that impact your work? I mean, how does that, like, are those conversations that you intentionally have, or?
Yeah, I think
just talk about that
interesting because, we are definitely, like, our organization is based in the US, but our big thing is when we talk about being a part of Malaya, we see ourselves as part and parcel of the struggle back home. And part of that is understanding the roots of why we came here in the first place and what brought our families to the US is a very dire economic situation that, stems from the relationship, like the colonial relationship of the United States to the Philippines. And I think what happens though, because sometimes we'll talk about the issues of human rights. Like that's our big thing is there are things that are affecting our families back home as part of the roots of why we're here in the first place. And it's not just affecting us, like fascism and dictatorship is like on the rise overall. But we have to see that we have a particular role as people who are in the belly of the beast to like try to push for our money to not go to fund like human rights violations, because we know that even to today, right, the U.S. has a vested interest in like keeping the Philippines close, whether it's for like military bases, resources, a market to like sell things to. And when we try to come into the community and talk about that, we come up with people who are like, well, I actually worked under the Marcos administration. How old are you? Like, have you ever been there before? And the whole thing is like, my family can tell you the story of how we've been impacted by all of this. Like, I think there's always a level of like, well, if you like would like to know, like see for yourself, like what it's like in the Philippines. And it's like, but we have, and it's like, it's interesting. That's, I think, where we have those questions of like, do you really know where you come from? And I would say we do. I would say that, it's interesting though to try to, I'm not trying to fight every like tita and tito about like all these things, though sometimes you feel the urge. But like, even in that, it's like, sometimes people think that, I think what we're realizing is like sometimes people think that if they like defend, I guess like these sort of unequal policies, then maybe they'll be more accepted in America. And that's not really how it works out, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching, was it Prop 187 years ago? I'm going to age myself now too, around, and all these Filipinos getting up there speaking on behalf of the U.S. government in not helpful ways. And I'm like, and I wanted to be like bad Filipino, like I could get to judge, right? I get to rate. But it was this like buying into a lot of the things that like Malaya and others are trying to work against. Which
and it's hard because I think part of growing up or being in our community is realizing a lot of our family and other folks make decisions based off survival, and it's not. And sometimes there's disinformation, misinformation, and it's like it's such a nuanced thing that we really only get when we're like on the ground with each other.
I just like to judge quickly. That's
it's
just
good
more
for a
fun.
stand-up routine.
That's right. I'm not doing that. Just not doing that. You all are great. So folks who are listening to this, all the links are in there. Their bios are in there. You can show. Please go and visit, get to know, follow all the things, so that you can find out a lot more what's going on with all the organizations that are going on. I mean, again, I'm new to San Jose. And it has just been just wonderful to kind of see a whole nother, a whole nother part of the Filipino American community in the Bay Area being so alive. So thank you all for the work that you're doing. But before we end, I ask all of our guests this question. What are you listening to? What are you reading? What are you watching? So it could be whenever you like, just whenever. And I will start. I just got done listening to the podcast about Michael Jackson, The Second Chance, The Second Look, where they take a look at like this tension between accusation and allegation and around child molestation and music. And it was so good. So good. I just got done with that, but I would highly suggest people listen to that. If any of you remember the DJ Jay Smooth out of New York, he is one of the co-hosts. And it is so well done. They do not tell you what to think at the end. They tell you where they landed, where other people landed. And I won't spoil it for you, but it is really good. So if you are in that place where you're thinking about Michael Jackson, trying to figure out where you land, all that, excellent podcast. So it's called Second Look. All right. Anybody else? What are you listening to, watching, or reading? Do you want to share?
I just started watching the Godfather series. I love that movie, and I like to watch it every few months. Just to kind of, I don't know. I mean, I love the movie.
Every few months.
Yeah, that's how much I love the movie. I know, and I'll do because I'm a very I love like mob movies, like Godfather, Goodfellas, Donnie Brasco, and I'll just kind of rotate them throughout the year and stuff. But I listen to a lot of island reggae. So I have downloaded this app called High 93, and it's basically one of the radio stations that are out there in Oahu, and it kind of reminds, and like Oahu is like my second home, so it kind of reminds me of Hawaii when I'm away from Hawaii. You know what I mean? Reading, I read a lot of Excel spreadsheets. I'm a billing analyst, which is like my day job and stuff. So I'm sitting in front of the computer for 8 hours. So that's really what I'm reading. Numbers and data,
Well, my reading is actually listening. I now listen to all of my books, which is, I count it as reading. So, Camille, why don't you go for it? What are you reading, listening to, or watching? Any or all?
I just finished watching something. It was a Netflix series called Sex Education.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful last season. So touches upon disability justice, what it's like to be a single mother, raising a child, repairing relationships with family and friends. So I feel like it just has a checklist and it just ticks all the boxes. And right now, just post-show morning, just such a great show.
So let me ask you a question, Camille. So when Sex Education came out the first season, I sat down with my kids and started watching it. And I was like, oh, I can't do this. I can't do it. Now, they were fine. They were like, we don't care. They're like, this is like, it's a you issue, Dad. Like, we don't care. And I'm like, yeah, it is a me issue, and I'm leaving now. So, but I've heard this last season is amazing. Could you watch it with your family, with your parents?
I could watch this last season with my family. That first season, no, but that last season,
okay.
You might have to skip a little, fast forward a little bit, but overall, you should watch it.
Yeah, I'm probably not doing that, but yeah, okay, great, thank you. Justher, what about you?
I have been over this semi NSYNC comeback. and so that Better Together song for the Trolls soundtrack, I'm just like, I get to hear JC Chaze's voice again. Everything is okay. We'll be okay, everyone. There's a pandemic still, but at least this is happening.
So I just noticed, right? I'm like, all of a sudden they're in all of my stuff.
I don't know. I heard Justin's going on tour again, but people are like, does that mean a tour isn't possible for NSYNC? Now my For You page is just it's just clearly I've just been clicking everything the algorithm knows. So, but I'm hopeful. I don't know. I hope the Trolls movie does okay, but I'm excited to hear those voices again. So that's what's been on loop for me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Great. All right. Thank you all. This has been wonderful. Thank you for being on. Thank you for whatever you're doing in the community. Again, Filipino American History Month, y'all. For those of you that are listening to this for the first time, make sure you go to all the podcast places, do all the things, rate, review, subscribe, all that. Make sure you look down in the show notes and click on and follow all of the things that we have all of that in there. And again, Justher and Camille and Mark, thank you for hanging out on BRC and Friends today. All right, you're welcome. All right. And folks, we'll see you in a few days with the next episode that is on Filipino American History Month. So thank you for joining us today on BRC and Friends.
BRC and Friends was hosted and produced by Bruce Reyes-Chow. Co-hosts were Jorge Bautista, Mickey Scott Bay Jones, Amy Kim Karamis Parks, and Laura Monaco Heifetz, and the theme music was composed and recorded by Marissa Magdal Laurent. And feel free to connect with any of us via the show notes. And lastly, please don't make me beg. Take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to BRC and Friends wherever you listen to podcasts. Until the next episode, thanks for listening to BRC and Friends.